struggle for the minds of men. That's why it's so important for everyone to understand the basics. We should begin our series of studies with an examination of socialism. Modern socialism and modern communism both arose on Marx and Friedrich Engels. The words socialism and communism are very much the same in their root meaning. Scholars say that the two doctrines are alike, and that the final results ultimately will be the same. Communist leaders frequently call themselves socialist as well as communist, and they call Russia a socialist nation, the union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Webster's Collegiate Dictionary defines socialism as a political and economic theory of social organization based on collective or governmental ownership and democratic management of the essential means for the production and distribution of goods. Socialism is advanced in various countries under such slogans as the planned economy, the welfare state, public ownership, social ownership, government control, and industrial democracy. Sometimes it operates insidiously without a slogan. To get a clear understanding of its meaning, let's be specific. Undoubtedly, England has the best known of the world's socialist parties, identifying itself as the Socialist Labour Party of England. So let's examine the record of this party, which took over in Britain in 1945, for our specifics about socialism. Spokesman for the Socialist Labour Party that year made public these planks in the party platform.
The Labour Party is a socialist party and is proud of it. Its ultimate purpose at home is the establishment of the socialist Commonwealth of Great Britain. We pledge ourselves to these ends: public or government ownership of the essential industries, government ownership of the railroads and other transport, government ownership of the Bank of England, government ownership of the land, central planning of production, government control of the prices and, where necessary, wages, heavy progressive income tax, extremely heavy inheritance tax, full employment and government control of medical services.
These, then, are the specifics of the doctrine of socialism. Now let's look at some interesting parallels between the specifics of socialism and the doctrine of communism as explained in the Communist Manifesto and as practiced today by Communist Russia.
The proletariat will use its political supremacy to centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state. Factories and instruments of production are owned by the state. Centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank or the state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Abolition of private land ownership. Central planning of production. A heavy progressive or graduated income tax. Abolition of all rights of inheritance.
The Communist Manifesto platform does not include socialized medicine, but such practice is a reality, for all medicine in Russia is socialized. The full employment alluded to by the socialist labor rights is referred to in the Communist Manifesto of an industrial army, especially for agriculture. And so we see the deadly parallels between these two creeds, socialism and communism, and how these planks with common roots were represented in the 1945 platform of the Socialist Labour Party of England. 3 years later, in 1948, the 100th anniversary of the publication of the Communist Manifesto, Britain's Socialist Labour Party itself published a centennial edition of the Communist Manifesto, endorsing it and showing it to be the common inspiration of Britain's socialism and Russia's communism. It should be made clear, of course, that most of Britain's socialist leaders, although not all, wished to reject the atheism of communist Russia and the brutal aspects of dictatorship. Nor do they apparently foresee the withering away of the instrument of government, which was the dream of Marx and Lenin. It must also be said, however, that close observers of British socialism declare that if socialism continues in Britain, sooner or later the harsh measures of absolute dictatorship will have to be applied, as they are applied in Russia. British socialism remains in control of the government from 1945 until October 1951. At the beginning of the period, many enterprises already were operated by the government. On March 1st, 1946, the Bank of England became government-owned and operated. And then, one by one, the government took over the essential industries: coal mining, telecommunications, electricity, gas, the railroads, airlines, bus lines, and all other transportation, the iron and steel industries, the hospitals and medical services. Central planning of production was established. The Socialist Labor Party had promised not to take over control of employment. But on September 18th, 1947, the Control of Engagement Order was issued by the Socialist government. This meant that every worker in Britain was beholden to the government for his job, and that the free choice of employment in England was abolished. This order was withdrawn prior to the 1951 election as a political liability, but it stayed in effect long enough to give discerning people an insight into what socialism means in actual practice when applied by a bureaucracy under central planning. The promise of Britain's socialism was for a worker's paradise. The reality of Britain's socialism was harsh. 4 years after the Socialist Labor Party took over the government and control of the economy, the food ration for the individual was 1 egg and a half a week, 3 ounces of butter, 6 ounces of margarine, 1 ounce of lard, 1 ounce of cheese, 1 ounce of bacon, 8 ounces of sugar, 6 ounces of meat, and 2 ounces of corned beef. There were other items, of course, but this was the ration limit on these items. 1 week's ration for the socialized Britain. Of course, Britain was severely crippled in World War II. This undoubtedly was a factor in the economic health of the nation in 1945 when the socialists took over. But an important factor in the continuing poor economic health of the nation would seem to have been socialism itself. Ivor Thomas, who was a member of the Socialist Labor in Parliament, thought so. In his book, The Socialist Tragedy, he announced his withdrawal from the Socialist Labor Party. He said,
"Socialism, if continued, will spell the doom of progress and personal liberty in Great Britain."
Yes, the promise of socialism is for a paradise on earth for the wage earners, a redistribution of wealth, peace, and plenty for all. But the realities in England were miserable. Austerity became a way of life slogan coined by the Socialist Party leaders. It was just another word for poverty. Under England's socialism, instead of a condition of plenty, there continued stubbornly to be a condition of scarcity and genuine hunger. Alfred Edwards, Socialist Labor Member of Parliament, was banished from the party when he called attention to the realities. He wrote an article for the Reader's Digest. In it, he cited an example typical of government mismanagement.
The Labour Party cabinet appoints the personnel of our industrial leadership. Hence, you'll find that the man in charge of a large regional department of coal is a former taxi driver who became the leader of a taxi union. He undoubtedly had some talents as a union leader.
Dramatize the pitiful realities of socialism as a way of life for the worker as well as for everyone. The Dispatch said the British Railwaymen's Union just finished 2 years of negotiation with their employers for a wage increase. The employer was the government. And at the end of 2 years, in January 1955, the union settled for a gain of 84 cents a week, or about 16 cents per day. And this increase boosted their wage from $17.50 to $18.34 a week. The highest paid workers got an increase of a few cents more than that, but this raised them only to $25.50 a week. The American railroad man makes from 3 to 4 times the wage of his counterpart on England's socialized railway system. Although England has had a period of years under a conservative government, very little of the socialization accomplished during the 6 years of the socialist government has been undone. Railroads still are owned by the government. So also are airlines and bus lines. England's banking system still is socialized. So is the medical service. The coal industry continues to be owned and operated by the government. Among the major ones, only the steel industry, which was socialized for only 8 months, and whose management did not change, has been converted back to private ownership. Thus, another lesson we learn about socialism, as we have examined it through the theories and the actualities of England's socialism, is that once it has destroyed the system of private enterprise, it may be difficult indeed, if not impossible, to bring an end to socialism itself. The theory of socialism may be exciting to the intellect of many people. Its glittering promises may seduce the judgment of millions. But socialism's record, and we do have the record of history, is a poor one indeed. It has not produced prosperity anywhere in the annals of history. And wherever it has been allowed to grow to its bureaucratic fullness, it has partially usurped or totally destroyed human freedom. And this is the important lesson. Next week, we shall examine communism. But for now, class dismissed.
The American Adventure Series is a production of the National Education Program, Searcy, Arkansas. Dr. George S. Benson, director. Dr. Clifton Danis, Jr. was our instructor. This is a continuing series based on the unique political and economic system which has made America great. Watch for the next presentation of The American Adventure.